Okay,
sorry.
okay.
Thanks. Sorry, William.
Good morning, friends. Thank you so much for being here this morning on this beautiful day. We're going to start out this morning singing together a familiar tune. And I'm going to start with this bowl to give us the note, give us the drone, get us centered in this space so we can fully arrive. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near, gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. I am Wangari Kamau, your worship associate, and I'm glad to see you here this morning. Please know that whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are from, whatever your beliefs, life circumstance, gender identity, or immigration status, you are welcome here.
If you're new to Cedar Lane, we have a small gift for you. So please raise your hand if you're comfortable doing so, and keep it raised for a moment so our ushers can find you. We do have some visitors this morning. Wonderful. Special welcome to all of our visitors and all of our viewers online. Let's turn and wave and give everyone a special Cedar Lane welcome. We've got people watching from all over the world, from hospital rooms, from their own homes, from far away, from nearby, but all of those who have chosen to spend their time this hour, we are grateful.
All are invited to stay after the service to enjoy coffee and conversation. If our guests choose to use a yellow mug, our members and friends will be sure to greet you, because yellow means
hello.
In this caring community, the pastoral visitors are an extension of the ministry team. Betsy Binks is today's on-call pastoral visitor. She will be available after the service at the Joys and Sorrows Candles table. Please reach out to her if you'd like support after the service.
Speaking of pastoral visitors, I had the pleasure of witnessing the listserv this weekend as people went to visit some of our members who are homebound, some of our members who are housed in facilities that they don't get to come to church. And it was buzzing with this activity of checking up on people and wishing them happy holidays and then reporting back to the group. It was really a blessing to witness. Another blessing that I believe we must recognize is the Friendsgiving of 2018. Can I see who participated in this Friendsgiving on Thursday? Fran, would you stand? Yeah. Fran, this was her brainchild. From what I understand, she came up with the idea, and then it materialized. It was made into something very real by Sarah Davidson in this beautiful red sweater. Let's give her a hand. And our ministry leaders here, Reverend Katie Romano-Griffin, Reverend Archie Turner, so many of our volunteers, Mary Means, and almost 40 chefs, from what I understand, brought things to share. And there was so much left over that people couldn't carry it home, so it was donated to shelters. It was donated to people who were hungry. And that leads me into another announcement that today is the first day of our annual shelter week at the Interfaith Works Women's Center. So that begins today, and there are still slots for us to sign up. We make meals for a full week for this women's shelter, this Interfaith Works Women's Center. And if you would consider how you can contribute, how you can sign up and make this a wonderful week for someone else in your community. There are a number of wonderful announcements listed in your order of service, listed in on these pages, the holiday craft day coming up, lots of things to notice. Another thing for this morning you'll notice is there's no religious education classes. Are there any children here in the service? There were in the 9 a.m., and I don't see very many, but I'm happy to have everyone in this all ages service for the remainder of our time together. Let's greet each other. Let's stand, if you're willing and able, and say hello to your neighbor. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
Grateful for each hand we hold, gathered round this table. From far and near we travel home, blessed that we are able. Grateful for this sheltered place, with light in every window. Say welcome, welcome, share this peace. Come in away from sorrow. Father, mother, daughter, son, neighbor, friend, and friendless, all together, everyone, in the gift of loving kindness. Grateful for what's understood and all that is forgiven. We try so hard to be good, to lead a life worth living. Father, mother, daughter, son, neighbor, friend, and friendless, all together, everyone, let grateful days be endless. Grateful for each hand we hold, gathered round this table.
Thank you, Quartet. As Eileen Louis comes forward to kindle the chalice, symbol of our faith and our gathered community, please rise in body and in spirit, to speak in unison the words printed in your order of celebration. We light our chalice as a symbol of gratitude as we celebrate the abundance of our lives together. In this sanctuary, we harvest bushels of strength for one another and offer our crop with the hands of compassion and generosity. May we be grateful for the ways we nourish and uplift each other, for it is the sharing of this hallowed time together that sustains us. Now we'll sing hymn number 21 in the gray hymnal.
This is a story of flour and salt, but it's not really as much of a story as it is an exploration of flour and salt. I've put these elements on our table this morning and joined by this beautiful bread crafted by Sibel Cruz. If you can see this, it's just beautiful. I couldn't bear to cut into it. We've got some flour, we've got some salt and water and yeast and some measuring cups and spoons. We've got all the elements here to make bread. But we don't have a lot of bread made yet, just a little bit. So I intended to do this with children, and that's why it's making me a little different. So why don't I just engage everyone? What are some of our favorite foods? Chocolate, good. Good, basic elements. We got coffee in the back, that's kind of food. Cheese, ice cream, avocados. I love pizza. Yeah, pizza's a great one. Kind of covers lots of barriers. Maybe we used to like turkey and now we don't like turkey so much anymore. How about salt? Is anybody's favorite food salt? Really? Salt isn't food on its own, though. You like salt on things, salt with things, salt mixed into things, maybe salty foods over sweet foods. Do we have any flour eaters? That's not food on its own either. And so we've got these things that on their own aren't much, but then together, that's when the real magic starts to happen. Flour and salt, these things that are nothing but can be made into something, have been placed on altars just like these for generations, not just for artistic value or to illustrate the metaphors of a sermon, but rather to remind us that we are sometimes nothing, but we can be made into something, that we are creatures of need. It reminds us of our own nature in a way, and of the magic that happens when we add things to it. So when we add just a little bit of water to flour, and then you add a little salt, you start to develop something sticky. It's these proteins that start bonding together. They form these networks, these sticky links, and it forms gluten. And this gluten network makes it into dough. It starts to make something solid out of the flour, out of the powders. It makes something solid, and it comes together into bread. And then the salt adds flavor, but it also strengthens those bonds. And when you add yeast, then something even different happens, and the chemistry begins to work. There's tiny transformations all along this process. How about, who's harvested wheat in the field? We've got some. Yes, good. How about who has ground that wheat, the kernels, into flour, ground it into something else? Yeah, we've got some experience there. How about the measuring cups, spooning the flour into the measuring cups? A few more hands, yes. And then the mixing, we've got the water added, mixing all that up, maybe getting our hands dirty, yeah. And then who's participated in the eating? Come on, that's the best part of everything. Bread is an important part of every culture in history, and we may not be part of the harvesting or the grinding or the preparing, but we have been part of the community, the breaking, the sharing, the eating together. And so this delicious food reminds us of all of those elements, all those activities and pieces that are required. It reminds us that we're better when we're together, when we're working together, when we're benefiting from the products of each other. So let us be grateful for those who planted the grain. Let us be grateful for those who harvested the crop and prepared the elements and transformed them from nothing into something, into bread. We're grateful for the sharing of all these talents and gifts that resulted in this miracle of bread. What we need is here at the table, just waiting to be transformed. So I'm going to teach you another chant that focuses on that concept. What we need is here. That's the only line you need to learn. There's two different tunes. I'm going to sing one and then invite you to sing it back to me. What we need is here. 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 So the first one with me. What we need is here. What we need is here. What we need is here. What we need is here.
Each time we gather for worship, we gather not for our needs alone, but to bear witness to the joys, sorrows, and milestones that unfold in all of our lives, and to serve as companions to one another throughout these profound journeys of faith. We gather in this space made holy by our presence to meet the wonders and challenges life offers us all.
As we speak each statement and lift our hands, we invite you to respond by saying, "We hold you in our hearts." If you are grieving the loss of a loved one, we hold you in our hearts.
If you live with or care for someone with grief or chronic pain, we hold you in our hearts.
If parenting is your spiritual practice, we hold you in our hearts.
If you are struggling with illness, seen and unseen, with mental illness or addictions, we hold you in our hearts.
If you've suffered abuse or injustice, we hold you in our hearts. And our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to others whose lives are lost and whose lives are impacted by violence and calamities in our worlds. For all those seen and unseen, spoken and unspoken, we hold you in our hearts.
May these friends of ours, our companions in the world, and all that lives unspoken in our hearts, be held in the embrace of prayer and by a love that will not let us go.
Friends, I invite you now into a time of meditation and prayer. Settle into your seat. Feel your back against the chair. Feel your feet connected to the ground. Roll your shoulders. And breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. In together and out. Spirit of life and love, the one that we sometimes call God, the one that we call by many, many names. We are grateful for this time together. We are grateful for this community of human beings reaching toward one another, walking with one another on our journeys. We have carved out this time to be sacred, to be set apart, that we might be refilled, that we might be fed, that we might be nourished. In this time together, let us breathe into this space and remember how to rise together. As we observe this silence, I invite those who are commemorating a loss, grieving a loss, or an anniversary of one. They're invited to rise as we hold this with you in community and observe this silence. we need is here. What we need is here. What we need is here. What we need is here. Now is the time that we put our faith into action and we transform our gratitude into generosity. Our offering will now be gratefully received. For the gifts which we are and the gifts which we bring and share to make this a beloved community, may we be truly grateful. May we share our gifts to create more justice, more peace, and more love in the world. Thank you for sharing your gifts.
The Kitchen by Gunilla Norris from Becoming Bread. Familiar and strange, the kitchen is a holy place, alive with possibility. A place for the elements, water in the tap, fire in the stove, earth in the food, air, between, around, above, and below. Behind the cupboard doors are the pots and the pans, the bowls and the dishes, the measuring cups and the measuring spoons. Holy things that lie ready for use, much like our dreams that lie waiting behind our eyelids. The kitchen is alchemical, a place where we cook actually and spiritually. We come to it for nourishment and ease. We come to it as to a center. The heart of the house, the heart of dwelling. In the kitchen, we are one, linked by hunger, actual hunger and spiritual hunger. We go to the kitchen to be nourished and revealed. It is a holy place.
Thank you, Wangari. The way Gunilla Norris describes the kitchen sounds a lot like how I would describe the church that I long to go to and be a part of. To come to it for nourishment and ease, with our actual hunger and our spiritual hunger. We come to the kitchen and to the church to be fed. We may feel like we come to the kitchen and to the church to survive. We are creatures of need, craving transformation. So today I draw from the most delicious of the sacred texts, in my opinion, the sacred text of bread making, sacred storytelling. It's a dramatic story with life and death, death and life, again and again in cycles. It's a messy story with some very particular guidelines. There are physical changes and chemical changes, and there's fire. Bread requires very high heat to get that crispy crust. And there's an infinite number of stories of breaking and eating bread, sharing it together in every language spoken on the planet. Bread is indeed a sacred text. I spoke earlier about the potential of grain, of flour, when water and salt are added. It goes through a physical change first, a change in form, but not a full transformation just yet. That's only the beginning of the story. When the yeast is added, that's when the chemical changes start popping. Yeast is a fascinating element of bread, and I really would have loved to have been there when it was discovered, accidentally perhaps. This single-celled fungi that converts sugar into carbon dioxide and makes whatever it's working with, the bread, it makes it expand and rise. It's the leaven in the dough. And that comes from the Greek word that means to enliven, to vivify, to bring to life. So this is one of 4 transformations that happens during the bread-making process, or the story, which I like to call it. First, we begin with the wheat in the fields. It's alive, it's blowing in the wind, and then it's harvested. It's a poetic way of saying that there's a death to the wheat. It becomes this inert grain that we can't find life in anymore. And so from that life to death, we take it and we grind it up. And then we combine it with water and salt and yeast, and then it makes something else. It makes this dough. It's alive again. It's active. We mix it and we cover it and we let it rise and grow, because growth is the proof of life. So it's gone from alive to dead, dead to alive, and then we put it in the oven, where there's a thermal death point. There is a temperature at which nothing can survive. So the yeast has served its purpose. It has done what it said it would do. It has proved that it's alive. It has risen. The dough has expanded probably once or twice or even more times than that. And then you put it into this oven, and there's an acceptance there in the metaphor of knowing that it's ready to become dead again. So we've got this bread that comes out of the oven that's yet in the dead cycle again. And so what do? We let it cool for just a little bit. Probably I should let it cool for longer, but I'm not very patient. And so we eat it. We consume the bread, and we transfer that. We change those yummy, delicious crumbs into energy, into calories, into growth. And growth is the proof of life. So this first big transformation happens with the yeast in the bread story. That's the big dramatic one that I think needs to be lifted up, if you will. The yeast metaphor lifts itself up. Gunilla Norris wrote a poem focused particularly on this yeast. She says, "When the yeast is added, we will see in the honey water the unpredictable, the alive. We can never own or truly understand. We will see how it bubbles and froths, how it rises up, and we will know that we do not have control. When the yeast is added to the sweet and the salty, the skin temperature, warm-blooded water, we will sense the irrepressible and how it moves into the very cells of our bodies, in the blood and the marrow. We are flesh and we are vulnerable. When the yeast is added, the impulsive, the unmanageable, the free, we know we will be moved. Every part of the mixture, the inert lump of dough will come alive, will expand and yield. We will be lifted out of ourselves, beyond ourselves. We will be worked. Gunilla Norris, this book that she wrote with meditations and poems, comparing the process of bread making with the processes and cycles of our life, is really a beautiful read. I highly recommend it. It changed bread making into a metaphor that I could return to time and time again. And when I was looking for other bread makers, when I was talking to other bread makers, I could hear those metaphors coming out in the way that they loved bread making. I found a TED Talk with Peter Reinhardt, a master bread maker, who's working on a whole wheat dough that will taste good, because we've started eating whole wheat bread, but it doesn't quite taste as good as the white bread that we've been used to. And so he has this great TED Talk about the art and the craft of making good tasting bread. He goes much more into depth than I do about the science of the yeast breaking down the sugars and the process of fermentation. But he also is deeply moved, like Gunilla Norris, like myself, by the story of the bread. He says that we have to talk about bread literally first to move into the poetic or the metaphorical understanding. And once we get there, we're more likely to see the political, the ethical levels of the story. Who has access to bread? What are the politics of bread, of nourishment, of sharing? We can get deeper into that level. And then that other level, that even deeper level, he says, is where we basically take it to church. The fourth way of understanding the story of bread is the anagogical way, the mystical, spiritual. That big anagogical word comes from a Greek word that means to climb or ascent. So this first understanding is a rising. It's a lifting up, it's growth, it's proof of life. That at this mystical or spiritual level, we're able to climb, we're able to see beyond and rise above the illusions to see the truth. I can hear all of this in Norris's poetry about bread. The anticipation, the movement, even the expression of vulnerability and unpredictability reflects the mess of emotions that we feel surrounding impending growth. Who here's a fan of waiting? Anybody? I'm not raising my hand. I was just doing it as a demonstration in case there was a patient person in the house, because I have not discovered the joy of waiting yet. We really don't like it. We forget to do it sometimes, and I think we don't remember on purpose is really what it comes down to. Rising is messy, and it takes time we don't feel like we have. And sometimes the things that leaven us, the things that make us feel alive, they backfire. They explode just like the yeast does. They burst into something we didn't expect. And they stretch us. They still make us feel alive, but they're uncomfortable at times. There's anxiety and enthusiasm all mixed up in the mess of our passions. But they also tend to make us more connected with one another. when things burst and explode. We find each other. We form those links, those bonds of familiar crises, calamities, and we help each other through it with other beloveds. And then these networks are formed like gluten, sticky, but full of things that enliven us. And these bonds are best, and we remember to rise, especially when we provide a good, nourishing environment for these things to happen. And so here we are at church on Sunday morning, in an environment that we hope will nourish us, recalibrate our ovens, perhaps, recalibrate our environment for our personal and spiritual growth. Perhaps we come to be fed, and perhaps we simply come to rise, to get a boost, to get lifted a little bit. Whatever it is that brought you here this morning, I hope that you know that all the elements are here, just like they are on that table. Everything you need is here. All you have to do is just remember that rising is part of the process, that rising does take some time, and it is messy, but that it is fruitful, that it produces something really wonderful. So please, don't forget to rise. May it be so. Blessed be. As I transition into our bread communion, I remind you that this is one of the most ancient practices known to humankind. Before there was religion, there was communion. We know how transformative bread making can be, and we know how transformative sharing can be. It's no wonder that religious communities all over the world practice bread communion in remembrance, hoping that they might also be transformed by the ritual act of receiving a holy sacrament of bread. A sacrament means a visible sign of invisible grace. So in our Unitarian Universalist context, we engage with this ritual, embracing the many sources from which our faith tradition was born as we receive this bread from our community.
And now, another poem entitled At the Threshold by Gunilla Norris. Stand at the kitchen door with me, honor the heart of transformation, honor your own heart where everything is, always changing. It is the very same dwelling.
Pause at the door. Your heart needs this. My heart needs this for recognition, or it will go astray. It will forget to reach for its real joy, its true becoming.
Pause at the door. This is good and necessary, for this room is every room. The world lives here. Pausing each day helps us know nothing is outside of ourselves.
Honor the heart that can feel the joy and the terror of the world in you and in me. Only what is truly human can walk this path, walk through and be constant. Bow to that heart.
Hold my hand, I need you for courage. We become who we are together, each needing the other. Alone is a myth. The path leads through this door. I cannot go to the kitchen without you. Let us enter together.
The ushers will now come forward with baskets and bowls of bread made by Lisa Chernikoff, Sibel Cruz, Tim Adkins, our Director of Religious Education, and yours truly made a vegan gluten-free cornbread for those who are in need of different bread. Please raise your hand if you want the vegan gluten-free, and you will be attended to. Now, before we get started, I invite you to, when you take a piece of bread, please hold it until I invite you to eat it. Just hold the bread as long as you can muster. And consider some things. Mustard? Let's wait just a moment as we're passing it out. I invite you to serve one another. Receive from each other. Take a piece of bread and hold it in your hands. Consider what this ritual brings up for you. Enter the threshold of memory, perhaps. What role have you played in the life cycle of bread? What role has bread played in your life cycle? And how have you been transformed in similar ways? Consider these questions as the baskets are passed now and we listen to the music. Thank you.
Let us break bread together on our knees. Let us break bread together on our knees. When I fall on my knees, with my face to the rising sun, oh Lord, have mercy on me. Lord, on me. Let us drink wine together on our knees, Let us drink wine together on our knees. When I fall on my knees, with my face to the rising sun,
Oh Lord, have mercy on me.
let us love one another in peace. Let us love one another all in peace. When I fall on my knees, with my face to the rising sun, Lord, have mercy on me. Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on me.
Thank you so much. Could we also have some bread served to our quartet as well? And our pianist? Yes, please. Thank you. Now that each of you have a piece of bread, look closely at it, if you still have it. Maybe you can get a second piece. Smell it. feel it, even listen to it. Does it make a sound?
I offer the words of Gunilla Norris in her poem entitled Breaking Bread. Break the loaf, see the miracle that the bread springs back at you. Light and full of air, hold together with earth and water, warmed with fire, moist and fragrant. Receive this bread and break it. It is you, it is me. It is us together. It is whole, it is broken. Receive this bread.
Receive this bread as it has been broken and shared in beloved community. You may eat. And to close our ritual, I offer a final poem from Gunilla Norris entitled Plenty. Having shared our bread, we know that we are no longer hungry. It is enough that you see me for myself, I see you for yourself, that we bless what we see, and do not borrow, do not use one another. This is how we know we are no longer hungry, that the world is full of terror, full of beauty, and yet we are not afraid to find solace here, to be bread for each other, to love. Our hands will work for peace and justice. Our hands will work to heal the land. Gather round the harvest table. Let us feast and bless the land. Our hands will work for peace and justice. Our hands will work to heal the land. Gather round the harvest table. Let us feast and bless the land. Our hands will work for peace and justice. Our hands will work to heal the land. Gather round the harvest table. Let us feast and bless the land. Our hands will work for peace and justice. Our hands will work to heal the land. Gather round the harvest table. Let us feast and bless the land. If you would, rise in body or in spirit and join hands with the person next to you. May the things that make you feel alive be your leaven. May your passions show the proof of life as they help you expand and grow. And may you become the unique miracle you need to be, KNEAD. And may you always, always, friends, remember to rise. Go in peace.